Welcome to Debate, our podcast of debates. I'm Dirk, one of your two co-hosts, and I'm debating today as usual with Sebastian. Our motion today is Shareconomy is a scam. And by the flip of a coin, we decided that I go first and argue against the motion. Are you ready, Sebastian?
You get started. Let's do this.
Okay, then let's do this.
Okay, let's do this. Dirk goes first and argues against the motion.
Sharing economy or shareconomy, is it a scam? I know it's a pretty hyped term these days. So companies like Uber and Airbnb claim to have revolutionized the markets by introducing something they call shareconomy. And it sounds pretty new. It's not. Native communities in the Andes, Native Americans, countless other societies have known for ages that there is some value on sharing resources. And that's exactly what sharing economy and shareconomy is about. In our typical societies, we buy goods instead of services in order to accomplish a goal. But usually, you don't want to have a car, you want to go from A to B. So owning a car is not a necessary requirement to getting from point A to point B. In fact, owning a car can be argued as being pretty wasteful because most of the time it's just standing somewhere parked and no one even knows that it's your beautiful car. It's not even good for your personal self-branding. It's just dead material sitting somewhere. So sharing economy tackles that by sharing resources between multiple people to accomplish a shared common goal. And this is just one example, and there are many, like tools that you can use to repair something, or apartments indeed that can be shared among people, things like that. Ideally, everyone wins. The car, in our example, is used more efficiently, which is good for the environment. You don't have to buy one, which is good for your pocket. The actual owner of the car can monetize on it, which is good for the owner of the car. And this is basically the model it is following. So we all share the burden and reap the advantages. No, Shareconomy is not a scam. It actually works if set up properly. It helps us sharing resources, saving the environment, and being better for us all.
Now it's Sebastian's turn. Let's hear his argument.
I'd like to cover three things in my 2 minutes, and then I explain what I'll cover in the next 3 minutes. The first thing is, yes, if you talk about Uber or Lyft or Gojek in Indonesia, which are the same car sharing services supposedly, it's cheaper and useful to users, perhaps. But the thing is, and there's increasingly more articles on the topic, it's detrimental to the workers, to the drivers. Why? They don't have social protection. There's ambiguity whether they're employees or freelancers, independent. The second aspect is the commission that Uber or other companies is increasing once these companies have reached their massive scale. So there's a bit of a double game here. So it's not exactly a completely honest game from the get-go. The second aspect is let's take the example of Airbnb and the supposedly home sharing aspects. It's nothing about sharing. It's merely a rental business. And the fact is that landlords are realizing, that they can make more profit by offering short-term rental rather than long-term. So it pushes residents out of the cities. And in some cities, there's no regulation around this. I'm not familiar with all the cities in the world, but there's a problem because residents can no longer live in a city center. It's just too expensive, or landlords are not putting their houses on the rental market. Nothing is shared in this case. And finally, I want to come back on the term. You talk about sharing common resources. Yes, you're right. But the thing is, a true sharing economy is almost incompatible with capitalism. In fact, we're talking about communism. So I'm not saying I'm for or against communism, but if we're going to talk about sharing resources, yes, let's then advocate for communism and truly share everything. Here we are paying for a service. And we're missing the sharing part. In the second part of my little speech, in the next 3 minutes, I'll talk about why these scaling issues show that this becomes a scam, and also why it's dangerous for users. It's not just a scam. As usual in my speeches, in these debates, I show the danger, the risk, the real risk behind all this. Anyway, upcoming.
Next up, Dirk. Let's hear his rebuttal.
You mentioned a couple of companies, so did I. Uber, Airbnb, and so on. And clearly there is a spectrum. It's called business practices. Since they are companies that create somehow a marketplace, you have companies that conduct in better ethical behavior than others. Clearly Uber right now has a lot of criticism, and rightly so. They are not really providing a good environment for their drivers. That's correct. And that means we have to look into that. But that's not to say that owning a car is better than sharing a ride on Lyft or Uber. It's not actually questioning the core model of a sharing economy. It's questioning the practices of one particular example in that model. And the same is true for Airbnb. For each of these companies, there are other examples where Shareconomy models are set up, sometimes even without a financial transaction, sometimes even without money being involved. But taking the money aspect, making it a little bit more clear why it's still compatible with capitalism, it's actually fairly easy because you create a new market. The thing that you enable with sharing economy systems is you enable microtransactions. People are able to capitalize on resources they have in a way that has not been possible before that and earn money. And that money they earn, they can spend on other things they want to buy or purchase or services or whatever. So you're becoming more efficient, you're becoming more enabled to make a living or add to your cash flow. And that is not a communist thing to have. That's actually capitalism in its purest form. So you're creating additional markets, and that's also good for everyone because markets that are healthy and active increase value for all of us. That is really at the core of why I think sharing economy is way beyond a scam. And also, sharing economy is actually the economic system that we developed everything else from. So we started in sharing economies, and it's still in many areas of our daily life. A sharing economy is still in place. It's nothing new. The companies that claim to be also new sharing economy companies these days, they basically make a point out of brokering transaction, and they use modern technology to do that. That's actually the thing they do. It's not that they introduced a complete new way of interacting with each other. So in the end, it's nothing new, but it's an evolution. It enables you to consume and create value that's not been there before. It enables you to have smaller and more transaction than before. And in the end, we share resources instead of wasting them. So it's, in my book, a good thing and definitely not a scam.
Sebastian, let's hear it.
So in Dirk's world, it's all a fairy tale. It's all perfect and working extremely well. And I just described the extreme form of capitalism, indeed, with landlords pushing out residents. Anyway, let me show how we have scams due to two aspects. One is scaling issues. Scaling issues. The first one is because it's so big, these businesses. On Airbnb, you have a lot of bogus listings. People get caught actually paying for stuff which doesn't necessarily exist. And Airbnb or these companies struggle because of the sheer volume of listings to review. And they can't do this manually. They have to use tools and maybe artificial intelligence, who knows, to make sure that they reduce the number of bogus listings. Now, because of the scale, it's impossible to regulate. The second aspect of the scale issue is the lack of proper training. Now, if you look at drivers of Uber, for instance, in India or Indonesia, they don't know how to use Google Maps. They don't know, how to actually deliver customer service in an effective fashion. Now, Uber claims that they're training them, and it's probably true, right? I have seen pictures, but it's very, very light training, right? So you don't get a very safe and secure driver in the sense that, in my case, when I have to find the driver, I have to walk across the street and buzzing traffic because the driver is not going to come and pick me up. He's going to wait to where he is. So it's actually dangerous for users. That's my second point in this second part of my speech. Overall, first point was scaling issues create a problem. I say it's a scam because it's an extreme version of the word danger. The second aspect is dangerous for users. Let me give you a few examples. First of all, users, let's say on Airbnb, are unlikely to declare the money they make on Airbnb. Right? Maybe in some Western societies, the law is pretty well organized to enforce the declaration, but there's no, in most of the places, I gather that people are not declaring revenue. The dangerous aspect for the customers is that by going to a home which has no safety measures like fire extinguishers, noise regulation, whatever, you're actually going in an environment which is not safe for you. Also, with monopolies or almost monopolies, what's going to happen is an increase in fares at some point, or at least the possibility that this happens. We're not talking about the US or Germany only, or France, but we're talking about worldwide scale where in some countries there's no regulation to protect the consumer, the end consumer. So there's a risk of scam here. And finally, fake smiles. The thing is, did you know that on Uber you get a rating as a customer? Now, I don't always want to talk to the driver. I don't ask how he is. I just want to be alone and left alone. I don't want to chit-chat. But I'm obsessed with it because I like good ratings, good grades. I was a good student, good employee, so I want good grades. And it's just fake. It's all fake. So if you know Black Mirror, it's a nice TV series. There's one about this, which is about rating each other. So this is why it's all a scam. It's all fake. It's not necessary. We say it's sharing, but it has nothing to do with sharing. It's just an extreme form of capitalism and making money.
Final statements. Dirk goes first.
Everything you said is true. Being in a car driven by someone who never received formal training may be more dangerous than being in a cab driver's car. Renting an apartment in an area that's not supposed to be rented out may increase prices, may be more dangerous. All these things are true. Although those are not the only areas where we have a sharing economy. Those are just examples of implementations of a sharing economy. So you try to generalize from the business practices of Uber or Airbnb to the whole idea of making efficient use of resources by enabling people that own those resources to share them back to others. Even if you claim that those things are not declared, I would say there's more chance than problem here, because having a central player like Airbnb or Uber would also enable to really look into that and force them to declare these things for others. Still, again, opening up a market, enabling others to be successful with it. So I hope, dear listener, that you agree with me that Shareconomy is not a scam and you're therefore against the motion.
And now on to Sebastian.
My points are very simple. These companies which offer so-called share economy try to go around regulation as much as possible. So many cases. It's not just generalizing. I wish I were generalizing, but the problem is it's not the case. And that's because they have scale issues. They're massively funded. They need to make money quickly. And they can't do that because it doesn't work that easily. Why? Because you need quality control, and getting quality control is actually costly. And it actually surprises me to say this. I am surprised. I want this to work, and it seems more difficult than it actually looks like. It's not a fairy tale. It's not communism. Sorry, Dirk, we don't live in that world. So, and I don't want to have fake smiles either. So, and finally, I'm concerned. It's dangerous. It can be harmful for consumers, for residents being pushed out. It is happening. It's a phenomenon. It's not just in one city. It's in multiple areas. So in conclusion, the shared economy, or the so-called shared economy, looks like a scam to me. And I am surprised, but it is the case.
So that's it.
All right. Again, another debate. It's what, number 1,200?
At least. Let's see.
We're close to the 30th debate.
Yes, we have
I like this
a
one.
year full of debate. Yeah, of course you like this one. Since I stumbled in my first initial start, you started liking it right there.
Not true, but I actually prepared it in 2 iterations. The first time I had a few points, and then I just tried to think today to prepare it, to finalize it.
So that's it with today's debate. Thank you for listening. As usual, you can subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and we really look forward to see your vote on our webpage, todebate.net. Just go to the debate entry. There is a voting thingy, a little thumbs up, thumbs down icon. Give us a click. Tell us what you think. Is Shareconomy a scam? Yes or no? Also, if you have a little bit extra time, just go to iTunes and leave us a rating. 5 stars is what we typically take, but also maybe a nice review.
Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode. Cheers. And it's as I said, every time we have a debate, it forces my mind to open up, because by default, I'm completely for the sharing economy thing. Like, I love the fact that you can have like so much access as a user. I don't really care about all the quality control and that kind of stuff, because maybe I'm a bit naive, but I think it happens to others. And I'm not the driver of the Uber, getting maybe not enough money to pay the bill, whatever. So as a user, overall, I feel very, very happy. But then I think twice, and then I realize all the articles that have been circulating about all the issues around it. That's why I'm trying to make this theory or this thesis around actually these scaling issues. The fact they're so massively funded, they just have to hurry up. They have to cut corners, and maybe it can work. But with the kind of economy we live in, I worry that it's not optimal.
Yeah. Airbnb and Uber weren't the first ones doing this model. And there have been predecessors that actually worked. But usually there was no money involved. It's like couch surfing, for instance, that worked.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
And
I was exactly about to say this.
The problem starts creeping in once you're a startup, as you said, with the cost pressure, with the need to really bring in money at scale. Because what they are doing is essentially they cut out all the costs that other companies in transport business or renting business, for instance, have. They ignore regulations because they are in that vague startup space, and save money that way. And also they save money by not being forced to, for instance, maintain a car fleet. I'm actually with you on that. The implementations of Uber and Airbnb are problematic at best. But what I'm saying is there have been examples that came before that really worked. And sharing economy per se, I think, is a positive thing. And probably there are other examples we just are not aware because they have not been that globally pushed. And I think the model itself can work.
I guess the obvious names that circulate around this, the ones that we've mentioned, give the shared economy a bad name. That's the problem, because there's something inherently flawed, I think, in saying shared. Although I get your point, right? We're trying to make best use of resources, but there is a bit of what I call the fairy tale aspect of saying sharing, because it feels nice. It feels like the couch surfing days, and I think the site still exists, by the way, it's still working. But indeed, it's a funny implementation. Well, funny.